Happy Baishakhi to you, Vishu, Bihu, for everyone. And we know that these festivals are a time for hope and light. But we know that we are also living in times of despair and darkness. Anhad and Shabnam Hasmi in particular has been doggedly mapping how the idea of India has been changing since Prime Minister Modi came to power. This is one more effort to mark that calendar of change. Rather unexpectedly, Prime Minister Modi recently used the term harmony while speaking about BJP's outreach to Christians. It was a language alien to him. I may be wrong, but he touched upon the need of Indians to live together in harmony only on two other occasions. First, when he castigated cow vigilantes, Gorakshaks, in 2016 for being antisocial. It took a lot for him to break his silence. By then, Unna had happened, as also the merciless killing of Akhlaq for allegedly keeping meat in his fridge, as well as many others. The stories, we know that Harsh is here, Harsh has documented some of these stories. Then in 2017, he also used the UP election, post-UP election. He said, I am for Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and Sabka Vishwas. So that was another time when he used the word harmony, albeit in a more, sort of circuitous sense. Since then, elections and other pressing matters kept him from touching on such themes. This Easter, he talked about harmony, but many say it is only to net the Christian vote with more ambition, and I'm sure many corrupt and ambitious bishops will be nodding their head in delight. I'm sorry for people like them, because they don't know that what happens to Muslims today will happen to Christians tomorrow, and what happens to Christians tomorrow will happen to Hindus, Dalits, everyone, day after tomorrow. One of the first things that became clear, so I will look at these 10 years, more or less 10 years, through the prism of the media. One of the first things that became clear was that this was a prime minister that preferred social media messaging to press conferences. The control of information from the citadels of power that had now become total was indicated as early as 2014. Soon after he came to power, he did away with press conferences. Walls began to come up in the most unlikely places, with access to ministers and bureaucrats increasingly unavailable. The government shared information that it considered important, while clamping down on anything else. By 2015, this clamp down on knowledge generation began to involve thinkers and intellectuals. Amartya Sen was turfed out of his post as Chancellor of Nalanda University the year after young scholars in JNU were branded as anti-nationals. The Tukde gang, and I'm glad someone referred to us as Tukde gang, because we are Tukde, but we are here today together. And as Avinash reminded us, it's important to come together to rebuild society time and time again. So, what happened was that a lot of money was spent on broadcasting the Prime Minister and the BJP's agenda. They spent huge amounts. They say 3,260 crore was spent on the electronic media between a few years. This, of course, is one of the major reasons why our channels and newspapers faithfully carry the government narrative. because they don't want to lose out on that huge bonanza coming here. You look at Adityanath's expense in terms of his advertising. He uses advertising consciously to target the media in order to ensure that he gets maximum play. Soon after Modi came to power, Mukesh Ambani swooped on Network 18, which operated a set of channels including CNN, IBN, and so on, and in that one move began to own a quarter of India's television channels. In 2017, Arnab Goswami set up Republic TV with finances drawn from a raft of financiers aligned with the ruling party, including Rajiv Chandrasekhar, now the minister in the Modi government, but then a BJP MP, and Mohandas Pai, who we know who he is. He comes on TV very often to tell us who he is. More recently, we had the Adani takeover of NDTV in December 2002. So you see the corporatization of the media that has happened in these 10 years. Editors had a tough time. If they did stories out of the box, they were finished. In 2017, Paranjoy was thrown out as EPW editor after the board of the Samiksha Trust, which publishes the journal, asked for a takedown of a published investigation relating to Adani Power. In 2018, Harish Khare resigned from his post as editor of Tribune. In 2018, Prasun Bajpai was thrown out of, he was forced to resign from ABP News show, where his mastermind was one of the most popular because the PMO did not want him. No wonder then that when the Indian Express published an investigation into the Sahara Birla papers, not one media house followed up on that story, which involved over 100 politicians, including a well-known chief minister of Gujarat at that point. Many editors and reporters have met a fate worse than that, much worse than dismissal. They paid with their lives for their journalism. I'm glad Avinash brought up Gauri Lankesh, editor of the Lankesh Patrika, gunned down outside her house after returning from work. There are many others, some of them small-time, stringers trying to eke out a living, gunned down for writing on sand mining and so on. What these years show was a consolidation of what, for a better term, we could call the BJP media. Enormous energy has gone into creating media to suit the party's purpose. First, in order to win the 2014 election, then re-election in 2019, and in between a number of state elections. Also, in order to shape the media narrative for the NDA government, we had election time amplification of Modi's image and message. Narendra Modi used the 3D hologram technology in 2014. He used it again after that in 2014. And much later, recently, he uses these methods, which are very expensive, but very effective. The 2019 campaign was powered by a media machine that used multiple media to promote one man. No wonder he said, you vote for me. Don't think of anyone. You just vote for me. You vote for the BJP, the vote will be for me. There was also the more audacious experiment with Namo TV. We know that it was launched on 31st March in 2019, just before the polling schedule got underway. It was a YouTube channel which simply telecasted repeats of Modi's rallies and speeches 24/7 and carried on DTH platforms. It defied regulation and it defied the EC notification. Complaints to the EC from parties got nowhere. Namo TV promoted Modi through every phase of polling, cocking a snook at the model code of conduct. But one of the masterstrokes of this government was to destroy independent sources of information. Thus, PTI, for instance, PTI is a credible news agency. It has been replaced by the RSS-controlled Hindustan Samachar as a news agency for Doordarshan and AIR. Now you have ANI get transformed into the favored news agency of the government. And sure enough, it has more than rewarded its handlers by faithfully amplifying the desired reportage. I don't know if all of you were following ANI during the COVID, the pandemic. If you saw that entire, the Tablighi Jamaat, the way they were targeted, ANI had a lot to do with the footage that was put out on this. They weaponized that narrative to frame Muslims as super spreaders. The irony is that even as the BJP's IT, even through all this, the BJP's IT cell, which put out fake news after fake news, assumed a larger-than-life role in framing news developments, real and manufactured. The government wanted to pretend that it is deeply, today, the government pretends that it's deeply concerned about fake news. Today, for instance, just today, this morning, the IT minister wrote a long piece in one of the papers claiming that the government wants to fact-check news about government so as to deepen accountability. He is, of course, being economical with the truth. He's a faker, if anything. The Ministry of Fake News is actually an extension of the government's drive to control information flows. Drawing from the same instinct as a rising surveillance, we now have face recognition technologies. What does that mean? People are thrown into jail by police just pulling out facial recognition techniques. The government did not deny the use of Pegasus, the spyware. Remember, it did not deny it. It chose to keep quiet about whether it was using it or not. And recent reports talk about the government of India shopping for similar spyware. How do we defend then the idea of India? And I'm so glad we had so many people speaking, and we'll be hearing at least two more important people speaking on this subject. How do we defend it? How do we make it our own, the idea of India? Well, the recent years have seen IT professionals take up responsibilities like busting fake news and so on. One good, for instance, the reason why, the attacks on Bihar workers, the so-called attacks, though there may have been bad behavior, the kind of the information put out that Bihari workers were being killed in Tamil Nadu was weaponized to create problems in these two states, in both Bihar and Tamil Nadu, both of which are opposition states. Look at the way that these things are, and it's because of fact checkers that we could at least get to the bottom of this and expose it. And the two chief ministers could talk to each other and ensure that this fake news dangers, were somehow handled in a way that saved both the states from what could be bloodbaths. So I think it's very important, the role played by, and I'm glad that each of us can be part of this exposing of fake news. We sometimes thoughtlessly kind of consume what is sent to us, but we should be critically engaged, ask questions. And that is the question that the ordinary person, you, me, and everyone in this room, can play a role, a huge role, in actually ensuring that the kind of information, public information that is circulating, for one thing, make sure that it does not affect us in any way, that we see through the fakery that is being thrown at us. That is important. And once we know that it's fake news, to make sure that others also know that it's fake news. We have to be much more proactive. And I think that is another way of defending the idea that is India. And then, of course, there have been so many new groups and media groups, some of them so small. Some of them that have come in regional languages. Last time before the UP elections, a lot of YouTube channels where people tried to expose the monstrosities behind what was happening behind the UP government's initiatives and so on. But of course, in terms of the bigger media, these are small voices. Small news portals like Scroll and the News Minute and News Laundry and The Wire and all these, they're small in comparison, but they are there. And it's important to, protect and secure their place in the reading cultures of the country. The problem has and remains the supreme indifference and inertia of the average person, who, while consuming media and social media, do not ask themselves whether this flow of information is in an increasingly surveilled and controlled political system, actually guarantees them their constitutional right to freedom of speech and expression.